All right, peoples, what's up? All right, we in Just the Booze Courtyard, and I'm really happy to be here again. My name is Shanon Mabra. Dance name is Which Way Shah. I come from New York City, the borough of Staten Island, New York, the home of Shaolin, the home of the famous group, the Wu-Tang Clan, and another famous group, the Force MDs, with another one, the UMCs. Basically, you know, I'm going to just give a little chronology, a little account of my history in dancing, or how I come, real fast. I started in Staten Island, New York, street styles, in the neighborhood of West Brighton. And my influence was the actual group at that time, which I didn't know they had a crew. I just knew them in the neighborhood, and they was the Fresh Style Rockers. Fresh Style Rockers. And yeah, these were my influences, particularly Vinnie Giles, later to be known as Thriller, and Shun were Boogie Boys, electric boogie style. And they acquired or got quite a respect throughout, particularly New York City, with different battles they had, as I, was talking with them recently, come to find out. So this is my inspiration with dancing. My first dance style was started, for me, I got introduced or interested in doing electric boogie style by the time I was 9 or 10. When they would have the block party jams in the park in my neighborhood in West Brighton, in the Markham Homes project community. And the big jam would be in public, past 18, public school 18, in the courtyard. And G-Man, the DJ G-Man would come out with his records, and he would, set up his record base, his turntables, and play particular rock jams, the latest jams, if there was any MCs that came out with recordings, soulful jams, funk jams. Jams, I mean records. So this is the beginning of my introduction into what has become a career for me, in the grace of God, and fortunate. My homies who I grew up with, who I began to really dance with and travel through New York City with, one particular guy, my brother I met when I was about 11 or 12, is Chris, a.k.a. Big C, Chris Hopkins, which I still have contact with till today. We started dancing the latest trends that were happening with the jam party dances. And we also got into, or he introduced me into himself, Big C introduced me into roller skating. The Ritz roller skating rink in Port Richmond, Staten Island, which was another neighborhood right next to West Brighton. So we would go to the Ritz and get a roller boogie on. And this is at the same time, early 80s, when the MC started to come out. Groups like Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. The group from Staten Island, also the Force MDs, earlier the Force MCs, or Dr. Rock and the Force MCs, and other particular groups, Cocos Brothers. They would be premiered on the early day roller skating rinks bill or presentation for the night, featuring Grandmaster Flash. So you would want to go to the skating ring to roller skate, not really particularly dance, just to see and be a part of this social activity. So in the early 80s later, the roller skating rink started to open up the floor for dancing. While there were already dancers, such as the ones I named, and there were some others not in my community in West Brighton, but right next, Port Richmond. So I'm still in Staten Island now in the early 80s. There was a brother named Pleasant who used to put on roller skates, white gloves, and he's roller skating, doing animation and tutting by a show as himself in the roller rink of Ritz. So Pleasant was another influential figure, as well as for myself and my friend Chris. Later, 2 years later, not even 3, 2 years later, we met some brothers in the names of the family of the Burnett's. They lived a block up from Chris in West Brighton. Whereas at the time, I moved from the projects to a big house in West Brighton, which was right across the street from the tall projects, West Brighton project houses that went up like 12 floors. So we met my man Glenn and my man Dion. These are brothers. Glenn was the oldest, Dion was second. They had a family of like 7 other brothers and sisters that were older. Glenn and Dion we started to rock with, hang with. Me, Chris, Glenn, and Dion. From then, we were practicing on the street with the cardboard box. We learned how to rock, break dance, boogie style, all of the latest dances of freestyle coming in. We had other dancers in the community. A brother by the name of Levon Beckham that lived on Broadway, that was in between where Chris lived on State Street and Glenn and Dion lived on South Street. Broadway's here, and this is all West Brighton. Levon Beckham was a boogie boy. Have his cigarette in his mouth, his Kango, his fresh Pumas. He's always boogieing. Every day you seen Vaughn, he was boogieing and gliding. Levon Beckham. We had Courtney Stewart, who lived on Henderson Avenue, West Brighton, going across Broadway. You go a little further up. Courtney Stewart was a boogie boy. White gloves. He had his little grin. Courtney Stewart. We had another brother from the project, West Brighton Project Houses. Magic. Magic was a boogie boy. His white gloves. He was more into the trickery style. So we had quite influential figures in my neighborhood. A lot of these guys that I'm naming now were particularly around within my family. The family that is, let's say, it's like the Mop Top family. The people in my West Brighton neighborhood was the same. We wasn't in the same crew. An example is that me, Chris, Glenn, and Dion, we were together. These other guys was around and we used to practice together. The older brothers, the Fresh Style Rockers, we looked at. And the Fresh Style Rockers included, again, Vinnie Giles Thriller himself, Shun, a brother by the name of Frost who moved from Corona, Queens. Some other brothers, T-Ski, if I'm not mistaken. They're losing my, I forget their name. So this is where I'm starting from. Now, when we go later in the 80s, we get to like the middle of 1980s, trends of dance are coming in. More MCs is making music. The MCs that are doing the performances in the roller skating rings and in the, not the clubs, but the kind of ballroom or youth center gatherings from the Bronx to Harlem, some areas in Brooklyn and Queens and Staten Island. And these things are happening, and now everybody wants to go. So it's a big thing happening in New York City, and dancers are taken in. Dances like the Huevo. Dali Huevo. This is a big dance. Related a little bit for me, similar to boogie style. However, you had to be able to dance with a woman. We got into this heavily. We started to go, by chance, we actually encountered the club by going to Manhattan. Now we're exploring. We went to Manhattan. We went to the club, the Underground on 14th Street. I think that's in the early 80s, if I'm not mistaken. We go to Brooklyn. We find the roller skating rink called the Park Circle or Park Slide. We go there. There's a lot of B-boys in there and rockers. We don't know who's who. We doing our thing. This is around the time when the Webo was coming in. So I'm starting to do Webo now. I'm not so much into rocking, breaking, and boogieing. I'm more into the freestyle dances. Now, freestyle is the most important and interesting thing to get into in New York City by 1983, 1984, from my experience. So the homeboys I was with, Chris, Glenn, and Dion, we started to travel to different places, different roller skating rinks where a lot of these things were happening, doing dances as such. Then you have dances coming out like the Smurf, which is an early dance. Right after that, you have I think the Alf, or actually before the Alf, the Cabbage Patch, then the Alf, and many of the dances start taking its course and following after that, in which you had to learn how to do to be a part of this experience in New York that I did with my homeboys. So from the early 80s up to about 85, I was heavily into the freestyle currents, rocking, non-stopping, what is predestined to be hip-hop from New York. Up to 1987, my homeboys, particularly all three, went to Albany, New York. Albany City, New York. Reason being, Chris started to go to college at a place called Hudson Valley, 1986, 1987, if I'm not mistaken. Glenn and Dion relocated there because their sister, Sandra, got an apartment. So they decided to go up there and see if they can venture on new grounds. That left me by myself and I had to travel up there with my homeboys to see what was going on and to be still with them. And we're still all about, we want to go out and have fun and party, dance at its best, whatever's happening, compete and be at the best. So I started to go to Albany, and I ended up meeting, from my friend Chris, I met Khalif Sellers, Loose Leaf, from Brooklyn, New York. They went to the same exact college, Hudson Valley. They were on the same football team, the American Football. 1, 2, hike. Chris was a running back. Khalif was a receiver. And when I go and visit, Chris introduces me to Khalif because they find out that they both are into hip-hop. So then we start going out in Albany City. And we tell our other friends, Glenn and Dion, yo, homeboy from New York, he get down, he get it in. Oh, he's cool. We all start going to all different places in Albany City from the college parties. And in Albany City, it was a major part of the up north, what I think they call it, the tri-state area, tri-state region, where you had Albany, Syracuse, and Troy. The Hudson Valley College was in Troy, New York. Albany City had Albany State, or Albany County College. And Syracuse had RPI, I forget the description of it. So these are all colleges. And the two major colleges was Albany University and RPI, and they would have college parties, homecomings. So many people from different places of New York City, different boroughs, New Jersey, state of New Jersey, even the Midwest, Detroit, was going to these colleges. So now everybody started to mix, meet each other. And that was a nice place for people to meet, because you have young teenagers meeting young teenagers, and a lot of them liked each other, girls and guys meeting each other. And exchanges of culture and dance was changed, and house becomes a part and introduced into the college parties. We end up forming a group called the group crew called the N-Effect Crew. N-Effect Crew. Me, Chris, my homeboys Glenn and Dion, and we included Khalif. We also took on 2 Albanians by the name of Duna and Ty. They were cousins, and this is all hip hop. However, Khalif gave us a new look, a new experience with clubbing that we didn't know about in New York City, because we were all hip-hop, and we were all inspired to learn what he was doing. Yo, this is hot. What is this? You dress different. Your jeans is cut at the knee. That's fly. You got on shoes. 87, 88, we start to change over into getting into this. This is in Albany. Other people started to be invited by Khalif, other people that are well known in the Mop Top family, and also in the family of dancing in New York City, from the club house culture. Khalif invited up. And we all began to meet each other, from Staten Island, Brooklyn cats, dancing in the club. We had some other people up there too that were in the hip hop scene that I used to see by face, and I knew they were good dancers. A brother by the name of Tricky, he danced for Father MC, he's from Far Rockaway, Queens. A brother by the name of Omar, he's a big choreographer. He danced with Shades, which they end up dancing for Janet Jackson. He's still dancing. These people are all upstate. We're dancing hip hop, and we're dancing the club culture, which is later to become house. Hip house, house. This is 87 going into 88, 1980s. So I was really involved with the dance existence and what developed and what took place, because this was a value for me that I learned and was carried over from where I came from in West Brighton, from all the people that I named before and my homeboys that I was doing it with at that time. And from that point on, by 1988, 89, people start going back to New York City. Colleges is finished, their education, and they go back to New York City. So now what's in New York is the club culture. The hip house music, the house music, the disco music, it's all mixing. Not so many hip hop parties. The clubs have changed over, if not closed. Clubs like Latin Quarters are no more. They're called the Penguins, and it's a mainly hip hop party, and it's a lot of violence. Many other clubs, Roxy's, there's no more. Skating rink was a Roxy, by the way. The skating rinks are now closed. A lot of things changed by the late 80s, and the club culture comes in, and we become a part of that. My homeboys from Staten Island became a part of it in a very non-interested and not so interested way. 2 of them, Glenn and Dion, decided not to be a part of it altogether in the dancing, particularly because maybe they wasn't interested in the dance or some of the people. Social. My friend Chris, he came back home, he started his career in life, what he studied in college. But he would go out now and then, but not as much as I would. So then I started to hang more with Khalif. As I was doing in Albany, I was hanging with Khalif. We had lived together at one point. So now we're going into 1990s, and now I'm in the club scene with mostly Brooklyn cats. And I'm from Staten Island. And Khalif is my homeboy because we met in Albany and he became a part of my group. So he was a major part of me being okay to be around people that I was not so familiar with, because in hip-hop you had to be familiar with people. It was a very touch base. Yo, don't step on my sneakers, you fight. When the club culture came in, it became okay. Club culture meaning house. And you have a different group of people coming in and a new way of dancing. Now I got inspired by looking at what was going on in the clubs, like the Tunnel, Voodoo Ray, Frank Thomas, in the circles by themselves. Voodoo Ray, Frank Thomas. One circle here, one circle there. Wow. Spanky, Brian Green's partner. Spanky's going across the floor by himself. This is a beginning of house dancing. Hip house dancing at its finest. In the club scene of the Tunnel, Sound Factory, Red Zone, and later to be Kilimanjaros. This is the early 90s now, and this is the time when, for myself and maybe a few others, especially myself, the career started to develop now. We're doing some videos. Being allowed to do videos and dance behind artists. If I rewind back and I talk to you about the hip-hop scene, my experience with any commercial activity with my homeboys was when we did a song, background singing, in 1985, 1984 for Cutmaster DC, who's from Brooklyn, New York. He came out with a hit track called Brooklyn's in the House. Brooklyn, Brooklyn, always funky fresh. That's me and my homeboys singing in the back. Me, Glenn and Dion and Chris in the back. Brooklyn's in the house. We used to sing it. This was a hit in New York. Cutmaster DC was coming to Staten Island. He was dating Glenn and Dion's sister, Louise. She was a fly girl. Everybody wanted Louise, fly girl. He seen us getting busy on the street all the time, so he wanted us, yo, can y'all come sing in my background record? We did that. That was the only success we ain't seen in the hip-hop day. Everything was mainly based on street credit and what you can do. When the club scene came in with house in the early 90s, things became open. Everything was easier to be a part of. It wasn't so much you got to show and prove. This was a law in New York City. You had to show and prove that you can get down. Show and prove you don't play around. Everything you did, you had to match it. If you danced, you had to rap. If you danced and rap, you had to look fly. If you danced and rap and had to look fly, you had to write sky high. You had to do all this stuff in New York City in the hip-hop day. Club scene comes in, it's not so serious and threatening. So everybody lets their guard down. We all meet each other. We all have some respect for each other. We hang out literally and break bread. We didn't break bread in hip hop. We did this. Yo, money, you nice. Yeah, I'll see you next week. We're house dancing. Hey, man, that was good what you did. What's your name? It's a great experience for you to know the changes in attitude and behavior and how it successfully helped me particularly. Commercialization, having a career in house, hip house dancing, club dancing of New York City and sharing it. And I have to share the whole culture with you on where I come from because that's my value of New York, where I got my things from, how I got influence. There were females involved too. There were females in my community. Names losing me. There was females in another community. There was a female named Shannon in New Brighton who was just as nice as me. My name is Shannon. The only other Shannon I knew was in New Brighton, tall housing projects in Staten Island, and she was nice. Later, I'm meeting Shannons that are men in the club scene in New York City, just to show you how big it is with people. So this experience is really good for me to share. The growing and development of success in hip-hop culture and the growing and development of value and cultural recognition in the hip hop culture. So hence you have me today. Now I'm living in Europe. I live in Sweden by way of being able to share house dancing. I'm doing things with dancing. I teach dancing. I have existence with a company based on dancing. All because of what took place with the culture of New York City. I'm happy to be able to do that. I'm happy to be able to be blessed and fortunate and very appreciative to everything that I came from, to whatever it exists. God bless, divine power, and it still keep going and flowing so I can show you how I can bring joy and appreciation into what took place in New York and now it's taking place around the world. Right? I'm talking a lot. I'm out. What's Brighton in the house? Fresh Style Rockers, my homeboy Chris, Glenn, and Dion. I ain't forget y'all. Peace One, Dance Fusion, Mop Top Family. We here.